The United States have sent us a letter with measures that would come into effect unless there is a negotiated solution. So we will therefore also extend the suspension of our countermeasures till early August. And at the same time, we will continue to prepare further countermeasures so we are fully prepared.
That was Europe's top leader, calling Trump's tariffs a global economic disaster. And she's just the first to publicly call it out. Donald Trump's latest $109 billion tariff move was supposed to be a show of strength, a signal that America, under his leadership, would no longer play nice with foreign economies that take advantage of U.S. trade. But what unfolded instead was a high-speed economic backlash that even Trump's own inner circle didn't see coming. Within 48 hours of the announcement, the European Union struck back hard, unveiling a massive retaliatory package targeting American exports. This wasn't symbolic. This was war, trade war. The EU's plan hits over $50 billion worth of U.S. goods, including core industries Trump relies on politically: agriculture, aviation, and tech manufacturing. Stocks for U.S. firms with heavy exposure to European markets took a nosedive. Boeing, Caterpillar, and even Tesla all felt the impact before the dust could even settle. And behind closed doors, Republican lawmakers are reportedly livid. Leaked texts between Senate staffers reveal concerns that Trump has blindsided the party, launching a full-scale economic fight during an already fragile election season. The drama doesn't stop there. Trump took to Truth Social, calling the EU response a weak bluff, claiming the US holds all the leverage. But that's not how markets, or global diplomacy, work. Trade experts immediately warned that this kind of escalation could spiral into a prolonged standoff reminiscent of Trump's 2018 China tariffs, which economists say cost the US economy billions in lost growth and raised consumer prices across the board. But here's the difference. Back then, Trump had the White House and the power to maneuver. Now, he's launching these economic provocations from the sidelines, trying to shape U.S. policy through sheer political force. And it's creating chaos. The Biden administration was caught off guard. Treasury officials scrambled to distance themselves, while EU diplomats demanded clarity, asking if Trump's statements reflect current U.S. policy or a rogue political stunt. Meanwhile, conservative think tanks, usually Trump-friendly, are warning of serious fallout. The Heritage Foundation published a piece urging Republicans to reject trade war populism that could damage long-term alliances. Farmers across the Midwest, who were early victims of the 2018 tariffs, are already bracing for reduced demand, with some reporting canceled export contracts just hours after the EU's response went public. And as Trump doubles down, calling the backlash proof they're scared, the reality is clear. This is not a clean political win. It's a messy, high-risk gamble, one that could fracture America's global trade relationships just as the country faces inflation, global uncertainty, and an increasingly skeptical business sector. And it's only the beginning. Behind the curtain of Trump's tariff chaos lies a deeper political strategy, and it's one he's executed before. The move isn't just about trade, it's about dominance. Trump knows that headlines about $109 billion tariffs trigger fear in foreign governments, excitement among his base, and outrage across the political spectrum. That reaction cycle is intentional. He's banking on the chaos. But this time, the stakes are different, and so is the blowback. Unlike the 2018 China tariffs, which unfolded while Trump held the full power of the presidency, this new escalation is happening from a position of ambiguity. He's not in office. He's not negotiating as commander-in-chief. He's acting as a political candidate attempting to force the U.S. economy into alignment with his campaign messaging. And that's turning into a legal and diplomatic nightmare. Sources inside the Biden administration confirm that officials were blindsided by the announcement. There was no back-channel warning, no policy memo. Trump just went live with the figure, throwing it into the political bloodstream like a grenade. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen was reportedly furious, according to an anonymous official who spoke to Reuters, while trade representatives from both Canada and the EU demanded immediate clarification from the White House. But here's where it gets even more tangled. Trump loyalists in Congress are now pushing to turn the proposal into real legislation. Senators J.D. Vance and Josh Hawley have both hinted that they'll introduce a bill echoing Trump's $109 billion tariff idea, putting the Biden administration in a trap: either reject it and look weak on trade, or engage with it and legitimize Trump's economic vision. Meanwhile, markets are reacting violently. U.S. manufacturing stocks dropped across the board. The S&P 500 fell nearly 2% in a single day, the sharpest drop in 3 months. And yet, Trump is spinning it as a victory. He claims the market tremble is evidence that globalists are panicking. But in reality, it's American workers and companies absorbing the hit. Major logistics firms like FedEx and UPS have issued early warnings to shareholders that international shipping costs may spike if the EU tariffs go into effect. And agricultural co-ops in Iowa and Nebraska, areas that helped Trump win in 2016, are already lobbying to get exemptions from what they call economic crossfire. This isn't just political theater. It's a live-fire economic test, and Trump is playing with loaded ammunition. The European Union's response was swift, calculated, and fully legal under World Trade Organization rules. If Trump's allies manage to force his tariff proposal into mainstream legislative channels, the U.S. could face retaliatory sanctions far beyond the EU. Japan and South Korea have also expressed deep concern over what they call destabilizing rhetoric from U.S. politicians. Trump's strategy may dominate headlines, but it's setting off diplomatic alarms across the globe. What makes this tariff threat even more dangerous is how Trump is blending it with his broader anti-globalist narrative. He's not just targeting the European Union. He's labeling the entire global trade system as corrupt, broken, and designed to weaken America. In a fiery post on Truth Social, Trump claimed, "We don't need Europe. We don't need China. We make the rules now." That message isn't just populist, it's incendiary. It paints allies as enemies and positions Trump as the only figure strong enough to reset the balance. But here's the problem. Behind all that bravado is a real impact on U.S. credibility. The same European countries Trump is threatening are also America's closest partners in defense, intelligence, and supply chain security. And now, those relationships are being openly strained by what some European diplomats are calling economic sabotage for political gain. This is exactly the scenario U.S. officials feared when Trump started gaining ground in the polls again. In June, EU negotiators reportedly opened a Trump contingency file, a confidential document outlining how to protect Europe's economy in case of another Trump presidency. Sources familiar with the draft say it includes trade insulation tactics, restructured energy deals, and even redirecting military procurement away from U.S. companies. That's how serious the threat is being taken. Brussels isn't just annoyed, they're preparing for impact. The fear isn't just about tariffs either. It's about what Trump might do if he regains full power with no internal resistance. A second-term Trump, surrounded by loyalists and free of re-election concerns, could pull out of international agreements, suspend NATO commitments, or even impose unilateral sanctions, all of which are being discussed behind closed doors in Europe's top institutions. Back in Washington, the tariff bombshell has triggered a fresh wave of divisions within the Republican Party. Not all GOP lawmakers are on board. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has refused to endorse Trump's proposal, warning that reckless economic measures have consequences. Meanwhile, traditional pro-trade Republicans like Mitt Romney and Lisa Murkowski have issued veiled warnings about returning to protectionist policies that damaged U.S. farmers and exporters just a few years ago. But despite the internal resistance, Trump's grip on the party base remains ironclad. At rallies, the 109 billion figure is being chanted like a slogan. His supporters don't see economic risk, they see revenge. Revenge against foreign countries, against Democrats, and against an elite system they believe has abandoned them. And that's where Trump's real power lies, not in the accuracy of his economic plans, but in the emotional resonance of his message. This tariff announcement isn't designed to pass through Congress quietly. It's designed to blow up, dominate headlines, and trap his opponents in a narrative they can't easily escape. It's part theater, part policy, and entirely strategic. As the tariff drama unfolds, Europe isn't the only region on edge. China is watching closely, and not for the reasons you might expect. While Trump's proposed $109 billion tariff package is aimed squarely at European auto and agriculture sectors, Beijing sees it as a preview of what a second Trump term would bring globally. In fact, Chinese state media has already begun framing Trump's proposal as proof that U.S. trade policy is driven by chaos, not strategy. That line isn't just propaganda, it's a warning. During Trump's first term, China endured wave after wave of tariffs and trade battles, but it also adapted. It shifted supply chains, deepened its trade ties with the EU and Global South, and started investing heavily in self-reliance. Now, with Trump threatening another wave of economic warfare, this time aimed at Europe, China sees an opportunity. Let the West implode from within while it strengthens its own global partnerships. But here's where things get even more complicated. Trump's plan could actually drive the EU closer to China. You heard that right. If Europe decides to retaliate or isolate its economy from Trump's volatility, it may be forced to deepen trade ties with less hostile partners, and China is waiting with open arms. Beijing has already signed major trade deals with countries like Germany, France, and Italy in recent years. If Trump's threats become reality, it would accelerate a pivot that was already happening quietly in European boardrooms and parliaments. That's the geopolitical irony of Trump's America First strategy. In trying to isolate America's competitors, he may be isolating America itself. Meanwhile, U.S. businesses are once again sounding the alarm. The National Foreign Trade Council released a statement just hours after Trump's tariff comments went public, calling the proposal a direct hit to American competitiveness. Automakers in particular are panicking. Many U.S. car companies rely on parts manufactured in Europe, especially high-end technology from Germany and Sweden. If tariffs go into effect, production costs could skyrocket, and those costs will inevitably be passed on to American consumers. The last time Trump imposed steel and aluminum tariffs, the U.S. manufacturing sector lost an estimated 75,000 jobs, according to data from the Congressional Research Service. This time, with a bigger target and more aggressive scope, the damage could be far worse. But perhaps the biggest consequence of Trump's move is something no tariff can measure: trust. International trade depends on stability, predictability, and long-term cooperation. When a single political figure can threaten billions in penalties overnight without any legislative backing, it creates an environment of fear. And fear drives allies away. Whether Trump understands that or not doesn't change the fact that the world is recalibrating, fast. And America, once seen as the anchor of the global economy, is now being viewed as its wild card. Now here's where the real twist hits. Trump's $109 billion tariff threat may not even be about Europe at all. Analysts are increasingly pointing to a deeper motive: election optics and distraction. With legal battles stacking up and campaign trail controversies erupting almost weekly, Trump knows how to shift the national conversation. A sweeping international tariff announcement gives him headlines, control of the media cycle, and a renewed image as the economic strongman, even if the actual policy never materializes. And that's the part most people miss. These threats aren't always designed to pass. They're designed to posture, to rally his base, to bait his critics, and to remind foreign leaders that Trump doesn't play by the old rulebook. But the danger is, the rest of the world is no longer playing either. While Trump's loyalists cheer the move as a show of dominance, seasoned economists and diplomats are ringing alarm bells. Former U.S. Trade Representative Michael Froman recently said, "This isn't strategy, it's provocation disguised as policy." European leaders aren't waiting to see if Trump wins before preparing countermeasures. Sources inside the European Commission say internal task forces have already begun contingency planning in case Trump retakes the White House. They're not just looking at retaliatory tariffs. They're exploring ways to make their economies less dependent on American technology, manufacturing, and capital. That's not just bad news for U.S. exporters. That's a long-term strategic shift that could reshape global trade alliances for a generation. And don't forget the domestic fallout. U.S. farmers were among the hardest hit by Trump's trade wars the first time around, and they're nervously eyeing this new threat. Many agricultural exports, from soybeans to dairy, rely on access to European markets. A trade war would slam those doors shut. Meanwhile, inflation continues to hover above target, and economists warn that new tariffs could drive prices even higher. It's the perfect storm: higher consumer costs, more economic uncertainty, and global partners looking elsewhere. But perhaps the biggest warning sign is this: the growing chorus of former Trump allies who are now publicly voicing concern. Larry Kudlow, who once served as Trump's top economic advisor, said on Fox Business, "This kind of blanket tariff policy is not what we pushed in 2017. It's a mistake." When even Trump's own former inner circle is stepping back, it signals something deeper. This isn't just about trade anymore. It's about credibility, consistency, and America's role in the world order. So what happens next? Will Trump follow through, or will this be another headline-grabbing bluff? Either way, the damage is already underway, and the world is preparing for impact.